In this video, you'll learn an easy, beginner-level arrangement of When You Wish Upon a Star. So let's start off with a demo, and then we'll move into our tutorial. If you'd like to download the tabs for When You Wish Upon a Star, you can do so from my Patreon page, along with my book of tabs covering all of the arrangements that I've shared on my channel. You'll find the link down below in the video description. This arrangement is for low G tuning, and next in our tutorial, we'll walk through the tabs step by step, highlighting the fingering and the rhythm. I'll also give you a tip on how to make this arrangement even easier. So let's get started. Now let's start with the first line. One thing to keep in mind is that every measure in this melody consists of 4 beats. So starting off with measure 1, here the rhythm is 1, 2, 3, 4. We're starting with the open 4th string, followed by the 3rd fret of the 2nd string, and then we're placing our middle and index fingers down on the 1st fret of strings 2 and 3. Here we'll play an arpeggio or a broken chord through strings 4, 3, and 2. Then we'll lift up our fingers to play the open 2nd string. Now throughout this melody, for an easier option on the chords, you can play just the melody note instead of the entire chord. For example, the chord in our first measure, we can play just the 1st fret of the 2nd string rather than the chord. So here's how measure 1 would look with this easier option. Keep this in mind as you practice this melody. The melody note will always be the highest note in the chord, or the string that's closest to the ground. Next we have measure 2. Here the rhythm is 1, 2, 3, 4. We're starting with our index finger on the 1st fret of the 3rd string. Then we're placing our ring finger down on the 2nd fret of the 3rd string. Our ring finger is already in place for the chord that comes next. So we'll place down our index finger on the 1st fret of the 2nd string and our middle finger on the 2nd fret of the 4th string. Next we have measure 3. Here the rhythm is 1, 2, 3, 4. We're starting with our ring finger on the 4th fret of the 4th string, then our index finger on the 2nd fret of the 1st string, and then the open 1st string, and then we'll use our middle finger to play the 3rd fret of the second string. And next is measure 4. Here the rhythm is 1, 2, 3, 4. We ended measure 3 with our middle finger on the 3rd fret of the second string. In measure 4, we're going to lift it up, placing down our index finger on the 2nd fret, and then we'll place our middle finger back down on the 3rd fret. Then we'll use our ring finger on the 3rd fret of the 1st string, lifting up our index and middle fingers to play our C chord. And now measure 5. The rhythm here is 1, 2, 3, 4. And we're starting with our pinky on the 5th fret of the 1st string, moving down to the 3rd fret with our middle finger, 2nd fret with our index finger, and then the open 1st string. And now measure 6. Here the rhythm is 1, 2, 3, 4. So we're starting with our ring finger on the 3rd fret of the 2nd string, moving down to the 1st fret with our index finger, then the open 2nd string, and then we're going to the 2nd fret of the 3rd string. Here I'm using my ring finger. And next we have measures 7 and 8. The count for these measures is 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So moving into measure 7 for measure 6, where we had our ring finger on the 2nd fret of the 3rd string, we're going to lift up our ring finger and place down our index and middle fingers to form our F chord on the 1st fret of the 2nd string and the 2nd fret of the 4th string. Now another fingering option is to use your middle finger on the 2nd fret at the end of measure 6. If you do this, then to form your F chord, you'll lift up your middle finger and place it on the 2nd fret of the 4th string. So you can use either fingering at the end of measure 6, using your ring finger or your middle finger. In measure 8, we have an arpeggio with our ring finger on the 3rd fret of the 2nd string. We'll play this arpeggio through strings 4, 3, and 2 for a count of 4 beats. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now here's an example of how to play the entire first line, playing only the melody notes. So instead of playing the chords, we'll play just the melody note on the highest note of the chord. Measures 9 through 14 are identical to measures 1 through 6, and measure 15 is almost the same as measure 7. It just starts on a D minor chord rather than F. So moving from measure 14 into 15, we'll place our index and middle fingers down to form our D minor chord. Now when we get to measure 16, we're going to play the open 3rd and 4th strings together. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now moving into measure 17. We have 2 notes here that are each held for 2 beats. 1, 2, 3, 4. So our first note is the 2nd fret of the 3rd string using our index finger, and then we have the open second string. In measure 18, we have one arpeggio with our ring finger on the 3rd fret of the 2nd string. We'll play this arpeggio through strings 4, 3, and 2 for a count of 4 beats. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then in measure 19, we're starting off with a rest, so our first beat is silent. Then we have the 2nd fret of the 3rd string, then the open 2nd string, and then the 1st fret of the 2nd string. So the count for measure 19 is 1, 2, 3, 4. And then measure 20. Here the count is 1, 2, 3, 4. We're starting measure 20, playing the 2nd and 3rd strings together. Here we have our index finger on the 2nd fret of the 2nd string and our middle finger on the 3rd fret of the 3rd string. Then we pick the open 1st string, and then we'll place our ring finger down on the 3rd fret of the 2nd string. In measure 21, we start with another rest on the 1st beat. So the count here is 1, 2, 3, 4. Here we're playing 3 notes on the 2nd string, starting with the open string, and then the 2nd fret with our index finger, and then the 3rd fret with our ring finger. Then moving into measure 22. Here the rhythm is 1, 2, 3, 4. Now moving from measure 21 into measure 22, we finish measure 21 with our middle finger on the 3rd fret of the 2nd string. So in measure 22, we're going to place down our ring finger on the 4th fret. Then we'll use our index finger on the 2nd fret of the 1st string, and then we'll lift up our index finger to play the open 1st string. The final note in measure 22 carries over to the 1st beat in measure 23. Then we'll play the open 1st string again, and then the 2nd fret of the 1st string with our middle finger, and then the 3rd fret using our ring finger. Now we're using our ring finger here because it's going to stay in place in measure 24. We're also going to place our index finger down on the 1st fret of the 2nd string. So in measure 24, we'll pick strings 1 and 2 together. So here's the rhythm for measures 22 through 24. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. In measure 25, we're going to our G7 chord. Here we have our ring finger on the 2nd fret of the 1st string, index finger on the 1st fret of the 2nd string, and middle finger on the 2nd fret of the 3rd string. We'll play an arpeggio through all 4 strings and hold this for 4 beats. 1, 2, 3, 4. Measures 26 through 31 are played the same way as measures 1 through 6. So let's jump ahead to measures 32 and 33 to finish this melody. In measure 32, we're starting on an F chord. So for our F chord, we have our index finger on the 1st fret of the 2nd string and middle finger on the 2nd fret of the 4th string. We'll play an arpeggio through all 4 strings, then we'll move to our G7 chord. So we're going to keep our index finger in place, we'll move our middle finger to the 2nd fret of the 3rd string, and place our ring finger down on the 2nd fret of the 1st string. Then we'll move our pinky up to the 7th fret of the 1st string. For measure 33, we're finishing on a C chord. So we'll move our ring finger to the 3rd fret of the 1st string, playing an arpeggio through all 4 strings. Now as we finish this melody with these final 2 measures, we can slow down the tempo. So here's the count for measures 32 and 33. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And for the easier option to play these final 2 measures with the melody notes only, instead of playing the chords, looks like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. I hope you enjoy learning my easy arrangement of When You Wish Upon a Star. Have fun practicing, and thanks for watching.